Excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you feel better. Before I make my comments, if I could ask Ms. Lee a question. Are you coming back to the hearing? The reason I ask is I know you have a particular passion for Haiti, and I have some questions in that regard. If you're coming back, I'll probably save those for
I'm not sure. No, go on.
I have to do it by myself then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. But I'm sure I associate myself with your remarks on Haiti.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, thank you, Madam Chair, for the time. And frankly, it's a privilege for me to serve on this subcommittee. Mr. Administrator, I never frankly know what to call you. Congressman, Administrator, Ambassador, or Mark. So welcome.
Mark works well.
Mark is okay, yes. Thank you for your long-held leadership in public service. Really grateful. Before I ask you a few questions, starting with Northern Iraq, I'd like to give a few reflective comments. I think that the United States Agency for International Development, that title doesn't appropriately capture the fullness of what we're trying to do here. And if I had the chance to rename this, this would obviously have to be shortened. But I do believe you have one of the most important jobs in the country, perhaps the world, because it is about a couple fundamental things: promoting human dignity, attacking the root causes of structural poverty, and attempting to create and imagine a 21st century architecture for diplomatic relations that's based in authenticity, in service, and this is the key point, in service to America's humanitarian impulse, international stability, and our own national security. Now, if you can find a way to take all of that and press it into a new title, I think we could rename the agency, because I think it's broader than the two words international development captures. And I know you have a particular passion for this, and I'm grateful for your service. You did mention we have humanitarian crises all over the world. And again, I think all of us who have been given this great gift of public service have to reflect on the more fundamental question as to why. We can move economic aid, we can move assistance, but why do we continue to have these humanitarian crises, especially in an age of unprecedented prosperity in some places, unprecedented development of the sciences and technology? The world is still screaming for meaning. And ultimately, I think that meaning is found in the philosophical proposition of human dignity. Let me fast forward, and I'd like to, Madam Chair, I haven't had a chance to visit with you about this, but if we could do so privately, I'd appreciate it. Administrator Green and I traveled to Northern Iraq last summer. What we were doing there at the request of the Vice President's office is to evaluate the aid programs that are targeted to the religious minorities that once flourished in Northern Iraq. Christian communities, Yazidi communities, certain minority Muslim communities once formed an ancient mosaic tapestry of religious pluralism. The Iraq War and then the consequences of ISIS and their genocide, their twisted, dark ideology has decimated these peoples. So the United States, again, very generously has transferred aid. I believe it's near $200 million. My findings were that there is possibility that this aid has the potential impact that we desire, a regeneration of these communities, helping Iraq save, again, once was a vibrant disposition toward pluralism. The situation, though, is urgent. The Christian community has trickled back. The Yazidi community, many of whom are trapped in refugee camps. There will be pressures for out-migration, more than there have been if we don't act quickly. But the more fundamental issue is security. Without security, there is really little prospect that the aid that we're giving and other countries are giving is sustainable in the long run. So, Mr. Administrator, I've talked too much. I've chewed up a lot of my time, but I'd like you to respond to that prospect. And what I'm trying to do is, working with Chairman Engel and McCall, get a resolution through Congress that lays down a marker talking to this issue of security and integrating, frankly, Christians and Yazidis and minority Muslim communities into the Iraqi security forces with some authority to protect themselves. Mr. Administrator, if you could respond to this.
Thank you for your question and for your concern. And obviously, you and I have had a number of conversations about this. I've been struck by the way that the Iraq government, in its approach to the flourishing diversity that was once there in northern Iraq, how they refer to it. They don't refer to minorities, they refer to component communities, with the idea being that Iraq cannot be whole if it's missing those key components. We do believe, I do agree, that if we are to defeat ISIS once and for all, we must undo some of what it tried to do, which was to destroy that diversity of freedom of a conscience. And so we think it's important work to be done. Yazidis, Christians, as you pointed out, a range of minorities. There are two pieces to it. As you know, and thanks in part to your leadership, we are providing valuable assistance to these communities to try to provide the infrastructure that allows them to return and to have economic livelihood. The two challenges that I see, which will determine whether we're successful in the long run, are number one, they must not argue amongst themselves. In other words, they cannot allow the fragmentation of the communities to finish the job that ISIS started in terms of breaking apart what was a wonderful mosaic. But most importantly is security. And as I often say, I'm not in the wish projection business. I try to be clear-eyed. And unless these communities feel as though there is some security around them, I find it hard to believe that they will either stay or return, as you and I both hope they will. So I think addressing security is a key part of our long-term success.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say to my colleague, I remember to this day, mention names, at a caucus meeting, the name of the person who gave us that briefing on what happened in Iraq. And I voted for that war. It was probably the most misguided vote I ever took in my life. And I agree with you, the impact and the suffering that has taken, when you have kids, much easier to build than to build after you've broken something. So that was a tragedy, and I look forward to working with you on this enormous challenge. And I know my good friend feels the same. Well, I won't say you agree with everything I just said, but we have an enormous job to do. And I thank you again on that effort as well. Ms. Torres, a pleasure, a new member of the committee, and we're delighted to welcome you.